Hello once again, and thanks for joining us for the 26th day of November 2021's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm David Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got first graphic showing hazardous weather graphic starting out there on the Kenai Peninsula area, eastern Kenai Peninsula, western Prince William Sound. That's for the area from Seward, Whittier, Girdwood, Moose Pass. Winter weather advisory out until 9 p.m. this evening for winds gusting to 40 miles an hour out of the west and 1 to 4 inches of snow, or winds anywhere from west to north in the direction there. And an additional 1 to 4 inches of snow possible or has already fallen, so that blowing snow reduced visibilities to a quarter mile or a half mile at times or less there. And then for the eastern North Gulf Coast, snow advisory for the Yakutat area, and that's out until midnight tonight for a total of 7 to 10 inches of snow there for the Yakutat zone. And then over to the east there for Juneau, snow advisory out for tonight, the entire night tonight, and looking to pick up 5 to 10 inches of snow possibly there in and around the greater Juneau area. And then farther down to the south there, Misty Fjords and Hyder has a snow advisory out, but that's for the time frame for Saturday through Saturday night. And actually, I believe that kicks into effect at about 3 a.m. Saturday morning and continues through Saturday night. And look for another 9 to 12 inches of snow again for Misty Fjords, Hyder on over towards Stewart. And from there, going to satellite imagery, you can see that, let's see, there we go. Cold air, southwest flow, and snowfall levels now down to sea level from the Dixon entrance area all the way up to the north for the southeast coast. And again, snow showers moving from southwest to northeast there kind of become sort of a general area light snow as it interacts with the terrain there over the panhandle, but kind of on and off on the precipitation there. Same thing for Yakutat, going from periods of moderate to heavy snow to nothing at all, and then it picks back up again. That's going to continue here for this evening. Otherwise, snow tapering off over the Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula area after some light snow overnight last night, and gusty winds, again causing blowing snow conditions for the Whittier, Seward, and Portage areas, with some light snow Copper River Basin extending northward across all of the eastern interior right up to the eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, clear skies, temperatures falling well below zero, 36 below, for example, morning low at Buckland, and about 22 to 23 below for King Salmon for the overnight low. Temperatures down into the single numbers across Kodiak Island with clear skies, and then quite an area of clouds over the eastern Bering Sea with the cold Arctic air moving out over the open water, and that producing kind of a widespread area of clouds and light snow and lower flying conditions there. Then kind of a break there from near the Pribilofs down to the eastern Aleutians, and you pick the clouds up again over the central Aleutians, and kind of a weak front there over the western part of the Aleutian chain there with some precipitation, a little bit milder temperatures for rain and snow out in that area. But that's pretty weak, and then the next one right on its heels, that'll be moving in. That's a stronger one, and winds will be on the increase over the western central Aleutians, spreading eastward over the next couple of days. Finally, a strong storm that still staying to the south of the chain, though, the low center, but that'll definitely bring a change in the conditions out over the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians this weekend, especially on Sunday. Otherwise, not much change over the interior with the moisture and clouds over the eastern half, and drier conditions with lighter winds on the west side. On the chart today, you can see low pressure hanging in the Gulf of Alaska, Arctic front there extending up into the northern panhandle, but enough cold air coming down, wrapping back around that snowfall levels again are down to sea level in spite of the southwest wind flow off the Gulf, and snow showers lingering, another inch or so over the Alaska Peninsula on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula there. Some areas may have seen a little bit more, but south side didn't see much at all. And then that area of snow over the Bering Sea. Next front over the western Aleutians, not all that strong. And we'll see tonight tightening up gradient there with that next one that moves up at the low center, 985 millibars south of Amchitka Island. So gale force winds on the increase there. Otherwise, high pressure light winds over the eastern Bering Sea with areas of light snow. And still some gusty winds through the passes of the Brooks Range and low wind chills, but not like it has been the last couple of days. And chance of snow North Gulf Coast stays unsettled over the Panhandle with precipitation falling each every 12-hour period, it seems like, for the next couple of days. Next storm there southwest of the Queen Charlotte's tomorrow pulls northward, brings more wind and precipitation into the southeast coast. That's the winter weather advisory, or responsible for the winter weather advisory for Misty Fjords to Hyder. Otherwise, not much change elsewhere around the state. Maybe a little less snow in the central interior as well as the Copper River Basin. Still some light snow up over the northeast interior, eastern Arctic coast. And the front and low pressure, actually another low pulls northeastward there. Very tight gradient over the Fox Island. Storm force winds there in the forecast, and also a big increase in the winds for the Alaska Peninsula. Snow and blowing snow before the temperatures start to rise somewhat. Same thing for the Pribilofs, increasing wind and out of the east-northeast with snow and blowing snow, St. Paul, St. George, and then lighter winds over the northern Bering Sea, light snow on the north slope, central eastern Arctic coast. Mostly clear and cold over the remainder of the interior, especially the southwest interior. Not much change for the North Gulf Coast, and the Panhandle looks to pick up more precipitation. Mixture of precipitation at sea level along the coast. Lows tonight out that way, anywhere from 25 to 34 degrees for your overnight lows. And let me back that up one. Below zero everywhere else over interior Alaska. Bristol Bay, 15 to 20 below, down to about 12 for Kodiak State Airport. Some areas will be colder. And in the mid-minus 20s for the Kuskokwim Valley, staying well below zero for the Kuskokwim Valley on Saturday. And 0 to 5 below for Bristol Bay. Single numbers, Kenai Peninsula. Some areas staying below zero, south central Alaska and the Susitna Manuska Valley. Definitely the Copper River Basin. Upper 20s northern Panhandle, lower 40s to the south. And followed by lows staying above freezing southern Panhandle up to Sitka, but down to the upper teens to mid-20s, Juneau up to Skagway. 25 below for the Copper River Basin, mid-20s below zero, maybe probably colder, 25 to 35 below west of the Alaska Range. Single numbers, Kodiak Island, well below zero for the Kenai Peninsula. Highs near zero for the south central Alaska, below zero in the Susitna Valley, and mid-20s northern Panhandle, lower 40s to the south. Not even making 20 for Kodiak State Airport. And then the highs up to the north there are lows tonight in the mid 20 to 30 below over the interior areas, above zero for St. Lawrence Island. Highs lower teens St. Lawrence Island, below zero everywhere else. And back below zero, 25 to 40 below for your lows, or 15 to 40 below over the interior there. And then highs staying well below zero all areas, but St. Lawrence Island high of about 10. Savunga and Gamble, and out to the southwest below zero right down to the coastline tonight, mid-20s for the Pribilofs, above freezing, mid-30s, upper 30s for the western Aleutians, and upper teens to lower 20s for the Alaska Peninsula. Highs tomorrow near 40 for the central western Aleutians, mid to upper 30s for the Fox Islands, 29 St. Paul, and upper 20s for the Alaska Peninsula, followed by.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Saturday morning. IFR along the Brooks Range here on out to the eastern Arctic coast. Marginal VFR central coast, and then cutting off about Point Lay. VFR, Noatak Valley, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, Kivlina, Red Dog, VFR to start, and part of the Seward Peninsula. And some marginal VFR across the lower Yukon River Valley area there west of the Kuskokwim Mountains, but Kuskokwim Valley, eastward to Cook Inlet, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, all VFR, Fognak Island, some marginal VFR, and that could extend down to Chiniak Marmot Bay area in the morning. IFR, Prince William Sound, and the part of the North Gulf Coast. And looks like about 3/4 of the Panhandle IFR with Lynn Canal Glacier Bay to Yakutat, marginal. And IFR with the next system kind of hung up over the western Aleutians and southwest Bering Sea. And for the afternoon, we've got kind IFR expanding eastward there, with the front kind of elongating off to the east to Adak and then Atka Island. Marginal VFR for the remainder of the Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula. VFR southwest coast, Bristol Bay, and it looks like marginal VFR creeping up the peninsula there to about Point Hope. And Kodiak Island VFR, Barren Islands, marginal into southern Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, eastern Turnagain Arm, IFR Prince William Sound, marginal VFR southern and western Copper River Basin, and all along the Yukon River Valley, Porcupine River, IFR North Slope, central and eastern North Slope, eastern Arctic coast, IFR southern half of the Panhandle. And for the day Sunday, IFR southeastern Panhandle there, and otherwise marginal VFR, Yakutat and to southern Prince William Sound. Cook Inlet's got some marginal VFR, and marginal VFR, 40-mile country upper Tanana Valley, north of the Alaska Range. Marginal VFR along the Yukon River Valley, and IFR for the North Slope and central eastern Arctic coast. Real narrow band now of IFR, central Bering Sea extending down to Udmak Island, otherwise marginal VFR everywhere else out there. And for Sunday afternoon, that area of IFR kind of expands from Udmak Island, southern Unalaska Island to Atka, across the southern Bering Sea, marginal VFR for Adak to Shimei and Attu. And Pribilos marginal, St. Lawrence Island marginal, right up to Diomede, and Yukon Delta coast, Nunivak Island. And some marginal VFR there for the lower and mid Yukon River Valley area, Nulato Hills to eastern Norton Sound, Norton Bay. IFR for the Arctic coast, North Slope, and Kenai Peninsula about Turnagain Arm into Prince William Sound, some IFR lifting in, and the eastern North Gulf coast there. And marginal VFR up into northern Cook Inlet, maybe Knik Arm, possibly Mananuska Valley, marginal VFR for the Panhandle. Passes IFR for Anatuvik and Adigan, either approach, especially on the northern approach. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, pretty good day tomorrow with VFR flying. Also for rainy, windy, VFR southern entrance, marginal VFR through the pass and out to the north. Isabel, marginal VFR at times tomorrow. For Saturday, shaping up to be pretty good for Mentasta, VFR, hopefully. And Tanita, VFR, marginal VFR possible. Lowest conditions will be on the eastern entrance. And for Portage, lowest conditions also on the eastern entrance, possible IFR there, otherwise marginal. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. And freezing levels south of the forecast area, south of the state actually, with at the surface here, south of the Pribilos, right across Unalaska Island, cutting across the south and central coast of the Panhandle. And as far as icing goes, could be some mixed icing, isolated moderate, eastern North Gulf Coast down across the Panhandle. Areas of icing, maybe even possibly considerable moderate for the western Aleutians. Otherwise, lighter and just an elevated threat of some icing for the Pribilofs into the Alaska Peninsula. Jet stream, northwest flow, west-northwest, across southeast Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, 60-65 knots. Cold upper low pressure holds over the interior, and southwest flow off to the east of that, about 60 knots into the Panhandle. Main jet well to the south. And for 9,000 feet, 70 knot winds and across Dixon Entrance, 30 knots otherwise for the eastern North Gulf Coast, 40 knots from the north and northwest, 30 to 40 knots across the eastern Bering Sea and Alaska Peninsula, picking up out over the Aleutians, 55 knots out of the east. Turbulence. Considerable moderate chop spreading eastward, Adak and Atka back to Shimei for the Aleutian Range and northern interior, as well as the southern southeast coast.
Floating hundreds of miles from Earth, astronauts get a unique perspective of our planet. While they might recognize landmarks, space is the only place they can see the very edge of our planet's atmosphere.
From orbit, particularly looking at the horizon, did bring to mind how thin the atmosphere is. It's like an onion skin around this great big ball of the Earth.
This uppermost layer of Earth's atmosphere, the ionosphere, also overlaps with the very beginning of space. It's the job of NASA's new mission, GOLD, the Global Scale Observations of the Limmendisk Instrument, to study this region, a region that isn't just for astronauts to explore, but that affects humans every day down on the ground. For one thing, this layer of the upper atmosphere helps protect us from harmful radiation and energy emanating from the sun. But in our modern society, it does so much more. It affects the smartphone that sits in your pocket and the radio waves that guide our airplanes. The ionosphere is a crucial layer of the atmosphere through which our communications and GPS signals travel. And when this region changes, it impacts those communication signals. Changes can occur above this region from the sun's activity, also known as space weather. Changes can also occur below from Earth's weather, such as hurricanes and wind patterns. Gold connects the dots between how space weather and Earth's weather shape the upper reaches of the atmosphere. But this region isn't easy to study. The ionosphere spans roughly 60 to 400 miles from Earth's surface, which is too high for aircraft and scientific balloons, and the lower regions are too low to easily study with satellites. What are attainable, however, are the swaths of red and green light shining out from the upper atmosphere. Formed when the sun's rays hit atmospheric molecules, this light, named airglow, comes from green and red bands of glowing gas. Some of the airglow is invisible to our eyes, shining in infrared and ultraviolet light, which can only be seen with scientific instrumentation. Taking advantage of our planet's natural glow is gold. The gold instrument, which is about the size of a mini-fridge, is hitching a ride on a commercial communication satellite, SES-14. The satellite's orbit lies 22,000 miles above Earth, where it can record images in ultraviolet light to monitor changes in airglow across the globe. These images give information on the temperature, density, and composition of particles in the upper atmosphere. Gold collects these observations faster than any mission has ever done before. It captures an image of Earth's entire disk every 30 minutes, allowing scientists to see how the upper atmosphere evolves throughout the day. Gold joins a host of missions studying the very nature of space, around Earth, the Sun, and planets. As NASA ventures farther and farther from home, knowing the nature of space itself is crucial for our journey to understand our solar system and beyond.
There's a new class of chemical compounds impacting the Earth's ozone layer and raising concerns among some scientists. But a new NASA analysis indicates stratospheric ozone could actually be impacted more by climate change and the continued release of already banned chemicals. The Earth's ozone hole is showing signs of recovery, decades after the landmark agreement called the Montreal Protocol that banned many chemical compounds harmful to the ozone layer.
So we know the Montreal Protocol was a huge success. This was signed in the late 1980s when scientists and policymakers from around the world gathered together to try to save the ozone layer.
The chemicals they regulated persist in the atmosphere for many decades. They thin the ozone layer and they create a seasonal hole over Antarctica. They basically take away part of our planet's natural sunscreen, and that increases the risk of skin cancer and damage to plants.
Scientists have projected the ozone hole could disappear almost completely by about 2075, but several factors could delay that recovery.
There are some industrial compounds that are not banned by the Montreal Protocol, but as they enter the atmosphere, they will also hurt the ozone layer.
But the unregulated compounds have a short lifespan in the atmosphere, unlike the chlorofluorocarbons that were originally regulated. So they have a short-lived impact on ozone, and we don't think they'll delay recovery by more than a few years.
We projected by 2050, more than half of the ozone-depleting compounds in the atmosphere will come from long-lived substances banned by the protocol.
Because these compounds stay in the air for such a long time, compared to the unregulated, short-lived compounds, they will have a disproportionate and lingering impact on ozone. So any non-compliance with the protocol can have significant consequences.
And the really big uncertainty in ozone layer recovery is climate change. There are many naturally produced ozone-depleting substances that are emitted by the oceans. And as the oceans continue to warm due to climate change, those emissions will increase, and that will further delay ozone recovery.
Scientists want to better understand how climate change will affect ozone recovery.
This is a hard problem. As a scientific community, we need to work on this major issue. We now have a powerful new tool to simulate atmosphere and its interaction with land and ocean to study this issue. And that's what we're going to do.
How can you see the atmosphere? The answer is blowing in the wind. Tiny particles known as aerosols are carried by the air around the globe. This visualization uses data from NASA satellites combined with our knowledge of physics and meteorology to track 3 aerosols: dust, smoke, and sea salt. Sea salt, shown here in blue, is picked up by winds passing over the ocean. As tropical storms and hurricanes form, the salt particles are concentrated into the spiraling shape we all recognize. With their movements, we can follow the formation of Hurricane Irma and see the dust from the Sahara, shown in tan, get washed out of the storm center by the rain. Advances in computing speed allow scientists to include more details of these physical processes in their simulations of how the aerosols interact with the storm systems. The increased resolution of the computer simulation is apparent in fine details like the hurricane bands spiraling counterclockwise. Computer simulations let us see how different processes fit together and evolve as a system. By using mathematical models to represent nature, we can separate the system into component parts and better understand the underlying physics of each. Today's research improves next year's weather forecasting ability. Hurricane Ophelia was very unusual. It headed northeast, pulling in Saharan dust and smoke from wildfires in Portugal, carrying both to Ireland and the UK. This aerosol interaction was very different from other storms of the season. As computing speed continues to increase, scientists will be able to bring more scientific details into the simulations, giving us a deeper understanding of our home planet.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Coastal water forecast. We've got gale warning south coast of the Panhandle tomorrow. Southerlies 35 knots, 16-foot seas. Central coast east-northeast 20 to 30 knots with seas 8 to 12 feet. And then the north coast north to northeast just 10 knots. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, northern inner channels north 25 knots, seas 5 feet. Stevens Passage northeast of 15, seas only 3 feet there. And then 10-foot seas for Clarence Strait. Small craft advisories due to southeast winds at 25 knots. And moving on to the day for Sunday. South winds 20 knots for Clarence Strait with 4-foot seas. Southerlies at 20 knots for the south coast. Small craft advisories on the central coast. South winds 25 knots, seas 10 to 11 feet. And the north coast, south winds 20 knots, seas 10 feet. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, small craft advisories. For northerlies, 25 knots, seas 5 feet. Stevens Passage, southeast winds at 20. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, north winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Southeast at 20 there for Middleton Island and that eastern North Gulf Coast zone. Small craft advisories for the western North Gulf Coast, north winds at 25 knots. Gale warnings for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, northwest 35 knots. Southern Cook Inlet looking at a north wind at 20 knots and a north wind at 15 knots north of the Forelands. And for Sunday, Northern Cook Inlet, northeast winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet. 15-knot northerlies there for Southern Cook Inlet with 3-foot seas. And good gales, northwest 40 knots for Kamishak Bay, seas 10 feet. West 35 knots for the Barren Islands, seas just under 10 feet. Small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast, west to southwest winds 25 knots. Prince William Sound, northwest at 15, seas down to 2 feet. Kodiak Island, northwest 30 knots, seas 7 to 8 feet. And for the Alaska Peninsula, north to northwest winds 25 knots, 6 to 7 foot seas. Bristol Bay north winds at 20 knots. And for Sunday, Kodiak Island small craft advisories, west winds 30 knots there, except Shelikof Strait northwest at 25 knots. Gale warnings from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev, west northwest or east northeast 35 to 40 knots there with seas 11 to 18 feet. Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, gale warnings northeast at 40 knots, 12-foot seas. Bristol Bay, northeast winds 30 knots, seas at 6 feet. On Alaska Island, not too bad tomorrow. Northeast wind at 15 knots, 4 to 8-foot seas. But Unmak Island looking at southeasterlies 30 to 35 knots. East-southeast 40 knots, for Adak and Atka, 45 knot easterlies from Chitka Island, and then 40 knots out of the east from Kiska to Shemya with seas just under 20 feet. And for Sunday, from Shemya all the way to, let's say, Atka, northeast winds mostly 45 knots, except north of Adak and Atka, 50 knots. Storm warnings there, seas around 20 feet up to 23 feet, western Aleutians. Fox Islands, east-northeast, 50 knots. That means storm warnings. Seas running 18 to 22 feet. And for Saturday, southwest coast, Yukon Delta coast, 20 knots out of the north, otherwise small craft advisory, St. Lawrence Island and the Kuskokwim Delta coast, as well as St. Matthew Island for 25 knot winds, north to northeast direction. And the Pribilofs, northeast of 15, seas 4 feet. And for Sunday, Norton Sound, north at 15, but small craft advisories, St. Lawrence Island, north winds 25 knots, seas 5 feet. Yukon Delta coast, northeast at 20 knots. That blows right across St. Matthew Island. Gale warnings for the Pribilofs, northerlies at 35 knots, seas 11 feet. Northeast 30 knots there for the Kuskokwim Delta coast. Up along the extreme eastern Beaufort Sea coast, Kaktovik to Demarcation Point, Barter Island, northwest at 20. And otherwise, central and eastern coast, 10 to 15 knots out of the north, northeast 15 for the west side. Brisk wind advisories, Cape Beaufort to Wales, north to northeast at 25 knots. And again, brisk wind advisories from Wales to Cape Beaufort, northeast winds 25 knots. Northeast 15 for the western Arctic coast, central coast north at 15. 10 to 15 knot winds for the east side there from north to west on the direction. For tonight, could be still some blowing snow and gusty winds to the eastern passes of the Brooks Range. Otherwise, not too bad, but kind of a widespread area of light snow there from the Yukon Flats northward to the eastern Arctic coast, and mixture of precipitation for the Panhandle, and also a chance of light snow, Prince William Sound, or snow showers into the Copper River Basin. Next system increasing the wind and precipitation over the Aleutians, pushing eastward tomorrow. Otherwise, not much change over the interior, still below normal temperatures. Another storm brings wind and rain into the southern Panhandle, and that moves through as the next one moves east.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.